that you lose the 100% peaceful, even if you're just joking, right? Oh, everyone knows it was a joke. Still, you can't. Must be 100% peaceful, or else they have their cause to squash you. And so we no, Alonso, we are not going to join Mexico.
Seriously, again.
You get the same things over.
When I get a second, I want to answer that.
The state could leave the union. Maybe they meant to say couldn't.
Yeah. So Texas versus White, the Supreme Court case, the only Supreme Court case that ever actually discusses secession, said very clearly there are two ways to leave the Union: through radical violent insurrection or through consent of the states, and that the only one that would be recognized as legal is through consent of the states. Violent revolution, not acceptable. Which is interesting because that is literally how the United States started. So when...
Is that kind of where you guys are at, is getting the Californians to agree to that?
Well, yeah, getting Californians and Americans both on board with the fact that California is so different from America.
Man, I've never been, but I can just tell, like, I just want to live somewhere where the norm is just to mind your business and keep the peace.
Yep.
Like, when the norm is to worry about the things that are, like, for our health and our planet and so on and so forth, instead of, like, the norm in America right now literally being like the need to find labels or reasons why this human or this group of humans deserves less respect or rights or whatever it is. Like,
yep.
Essentially the right to mind everyone else's business. And I'm just like, I can't take it anymore.
Yeah, no.
I have a question. Sorry, she's been waiting for a little bit.
Okay, yeah.
I have a question. So I have a couple of family members who have a green card holder. So as them being a part of trying to get a U.S. citizen, but they've been here for, I would say, like almost 30 years.
There you go.
30 years, and they still have a green card holder. How would you guys go about that if we do initially have that separation, we become our own country?
Well,
is there like I'm sorry. Is there like, I know that our system has failed for reformation for them to come entering in how it's supposed to come the right way. I know it sucks. California has the biggest one here, and I've met a ton of people that don't have any whatsoever of a criminal background, and it gets tiring. That's why I was asking. Those that have a green card holder that been here long enough, are they? I mean, not. What is the process of what you guys are trying to do?
Hello?
Yeah. I'm sorry, Sarah. Were you saying something?
I think she froze.
Let me take it.
Oh,
is it okay?
Yeah. Before I turn it over to Marcus, let me just say real quick. While things, oh yeah, she is frozen. We're still here though, Sarah. While things will be up to the voters to decide, it's important to remember that California. Oh, there she is.
Sorry. I was like, where is everybody?
California has a way of doing things that is much different from the United States' way of doing things. California, when it was its own independent country, and this also kind of goes back to Robbie as well, is that when California was its own independent country, before America, the United States of America, sent its military, its navy, and its army in and annexed us and like had a war here and everything. Before that, it didn't matter where you came from in the world. It didn't matter how long you'd been here. It didn't matter what gender, what religious practice, nothing mattered. If you are a human being and you are living in California, you just live in peace and harmony. You go and do things like, yeah, the people will rise up and take care of the problem. But as long as you're not a problem, no one's, coming after you. It wasn't, women could vote. The wealthiest man in California, the wealthiest person in California was a black man. The United States came in, annexed us. The wealthiest person was then a white man who was given most of that black man's property. Racism, sexism, classism, xenophobia, none of that existed in California until the United States came in.
Welcome to the truth. Sometimes the truth hurts. Yeah. California was the land of diversity and immigrants. We had people from China, Japan, the Philippines, El Salvador, Mexico. All of the tribes were still intact, except for maybe like 6 out of 400. And we had African-American people, Jewish people here, Frenchmen, Scotsmen, English people, and others from around the world. So the richest, most powerful man was a black Jew. He was half African-American and half Jewish, and he was the most wealthiest, successful, and powerful person here until America invaded in 1852 or 1849. And they instantly implemented segregation. We had integrated schools. That was ended by Americans in 1852. They started telling Asian people, you can't own property. Asians were able to own property. Then they started telling women, you don't have the same rights for property that you used to have under traditional California Mexican law. Then they implemented xenophobia, and they started banning other people from coming in. And then they officiated a genocide where they intentionally tried to wipe out all the tribes in what's called Gold Country now. And they literally gave receipts for indigenous people's heads. I'm not joking. We have the pictures. So Sacramento would give you a receipt. You would come with a wagon full of indigenous people's heads. I think $1 for a male, 50 cents for a woman, and 25 cents for a child. Yes, they chopped off children's heads. They would go to Sacramento. Sorry. You're right. And they would get a receipt for that. So that's the American history that came here. We find that most Californians have absolutely no idea of how America took this place over, what they kind of implemented, that there was a black man basically ran this place. I mean, we showed that to our new partner, Xavier. He had no idea. He's a PhD, and he's an African-American.
I really found that out when I was going to high school.
Yeah.
That I knew about.
They won't talk about it because it's an ugly story. Basically, what it says was we were for diversity, we were for international trade, we were for getting along, and then America came and shot everybody who disagreed, told all the Mexicans you can't vote, told all the black people you have to be segregated, told all the Asian people you can't you can't own property, told all the indigenous go ahead and die, and then they forced white people to come in and voted in. I remember crying when I saw my niece's report card on what's called Ascension Day. So if you are aware of California schools, they just tell the children, Americans voted for California to join America. And that's how California became. Yay! That's all they cover. They don't know any of the disgusting, horrible history. I'll leave it to you to explain why we're a diversity-loving state, why we're a civil rights state, and yet 95% of our population doesn't know the racist, xenophobic, disgusting history of how America took us over for white supremacy. By the way, the operating philosophy at that time was called Manifest Destiny, which said that white people are superior to all non-white people. You can literally type in Manifest Destiny picture, and you'll see a painting of the period of a white mistress in the air. And Mexican people and indigenous people are running away in terror as the white people come to take them over. It's literally a white supremacy operation. Should we be surprised that they committed genocide against the indigenous, therefore?
Yeah, I know about that. I feel like it's still going on, but every country has its own racism as it spreads.
Most countries did not invade another country and say all the people here are wrong and have to become second-class citizens and die. That's just an American myth we tell ourselves because America has such a horrible, disgusting history. Most of the world doesn't. So of the like 200-ish nations, most of those places, those people go back to prehistory. They were the only ones there. Then writing occurred, and then there were some changes and some inter-ethnic mixing, but they have some idea of themselves. America, Australia, and Canada, New Zealand, and South Africa are basically the only places in the world where one group who was not from there came in and pushed everybody out and wiped them out. Israel's another example. This is not common. This is unique. This is an American story. And we tell our children that everybody does this so that we don't have to deal with how uniquely disgusting American history is.
Right.
All right, sir. Please bring your parents next time. Thank you for participating.
Yeah, and if you have anyone in Scotland who wants to get in touch with us, I am going to put my email in right now. Have them email. We'll be in touch. I'll definitely help out. Totally love the Scots.
Can I do some more Latin stuff? I'm sorry.
Leo, your Nan, I know your Nan lives in California, so if you have any questions, and she like
Karen, we see you. How you doing?
Great.
We're doing TikTok live for a few minutes. We'll get started on this in just a second.
Yeah, is there a link on Zoom? It seems I was on Zoom last time.
Sarah, could I say a few things on Latin issues real quick?
go for it.
Real quick, just to Jack Whirlpool in Texas versus White, they said you could secede with consent of the states, sir. So what you're saying there is incorrect. As far as Latin people go, so America hasn't passed immigration reform since Ronald Reagan. That's about 50 years ago or half a century. A lot of experts say that there will never be immigration reform in America because Obama promised to do it and then famously totally backed out on Latin people and didn't do it. And that was the most progressive president we've seen in a while. So you can't pull it off in 5 decades. Why do we believe people will ever do it? This woman who's a Latina was talking about her family as green card holders for 30 years. That's ridiculous. This is partly why I believe in secession. Average Latin person who immigrates, it's a 20-year time frame. So when they're talking about you got to do it the right way, that means wait 20 years as a second citizen. Secondly, why is it the right thing to say you got to come the right way in California? America illegally invaded California, shot everybody who disagreed, told all the black people you're second-class citizens, told all the Mexicans you don't get a vote, told all the Asians you can't own property, and then committed a genocide? That's a legal regime we should respect. Based on what? You're basically Hitler when you took this place over, and now you're going, you need to respect my rights. What are you talking about? And most of the Americans who say this have no idea of how America took over California. They don't. So if California was independent, we'd have immigration reform within 6 months. So your family that waited 30 years, they'd wait 6 months. If you're waiting in America, you can plan another 50 years. So for all the Latin people who have undocumented immigrants in their family, like myself, my grandfather came here illegally, and I'm very proud of that. Do you want people to be first-class citizens in 6 months, or do you want to wait another 30 to 50 years? Because those are your two options. California will back immigration reform. America never will. The 1.8 million undocumented immigrants here who are primarily Latino, but not exclusively. There's about 500,000 Chinese here, and we love you too. You all deserve the right to be first-class citizens and not second-class citizens. I'd point out that California pushed the driver's license for undocumented, and America hated that. Part of the reason they pushed Trump in is because they don't like how opening we are to accepting to people. So count on California. We'll do it. Additionally, I got to say this whole California joining Mexico thing is really stupid. I also think it's a little bit racist. I'm Latin. I get this all the time. I find it racist. Just because California was never part of Mexico. It was independent from Mexico from 1835 to 1846. The people here refer to themselves as Californios. While they were of Mexican heritage and Mexican language and Mexican features, they consider themselves different, and they pushed out the Mexican government while still accepting Mexicans. So the identity was very different from here. Additionally, the idea that a small economy is going to take over a larger economy hasn't happened since basically 1540 when the Mongols invaded China. There is no example where a small economy invades and takes over a larger economy. Secondly, the CIA has listed Mexico, I'm sorry, as a failed state. The cartels run it. Do we really want the world's 5th largest economy to be run by a state that the CIA and the NSA has said is run by cartels? you're talking about economic collapse for the world's 5th largest economy. I really don't like this line of questioning. I think it's inappropriate, and I think it's tied to my heritage, and I don't appreciate that. Hey, nothing but love, nothing but love. Well, me too. My grandfather came from Durango. He was an undocumented immigrant. My grandmother came here too. Spanish was spoken in the house. I have family who in Texas will not call themselves Americans because they're Tejano. They were conquered by white people and forced to become part of Texas, and they never got U.S. citizenship, and they're proud of it. So just so that you know, we can do both. If you want to have the StreamYard running, we'll take questions from both people. Here's the StreamYard. Hey, StreamYard, say hi to TikTok. Woo!
Hi.
Yeah. So you can see. You can see.
Probably be getting ready for my event. I'll leave it up. You guys want to
Sure. Sure. So can everybody on StreamYard hear me? Can you hear me in the studio?
I can hear you.
Kristen Mayo, we can't hear you. Stanley Welch.
You can't hear me?
We can't hear you. Heron, can you say something?
What would you like me to say?
Your volume's down, maybe on the computer.
Okay, give me 1 second here.
You cannot hear me.
Yeah,
Oh,
we can.
it's my fault. My volume was down. I'm sorry. I'm a techno noob. That's my bad. I'm not good at tech.
No worse than me.
So
This is Kristen. Can you hear me?
yes, Kristen, I can hear you. And Stanley, I can hear you. And Heron, I can hear you. Thank you all for being here. We're trying to do something different. We found that different social media channels attract different groups. And so a lot of people don't like TikTok. We respect that. But a lot of the youth do. And a lot of the people who aren't youth like other platforms. So we have to get the message out to everybody the way they like to digest material. So we've been doing TikTok, but now the TikTok's following us. So Heron, and then Kristen, and then Stanley. Any questions? You can ask anything you want. I'm here to answer anything. That's why we have these meetings. We'll do an update on progress and where we're at, but questions? No?
I got
All right, Kristen?
I have questions.
Yes, please. What questions you got?
Yeah, I've emailed you before about this and haven't received a reply.
Sure.
But I have collected some signatures on the petition. But according to the Registrar of Voters in my county, which is San Mateo County,
Oh, yeah.
says they will not accept signed petitions from anybody other than the promoter of the petition, which is you, or if you delegate to somebody like me with some kind of affidavit or something saying,
Yeah.
I hereby, appoint Kristen Mayo as the
Yeah.
person to deliver petitions. Otherwise, they won't take them. They won't
So
accept
I'm sorry to have to do this, but what they're telling you is not legally accurate. So under California law, on the petition, once you sign it as the circulator, and this is in the training, so there's a box called circulator. When you fill that out as circulator, you are legally the person signing and filling everything out, and that's all you need to do to turn it in. This is California law. It's been that way for decades. I don't know why they're saying that, but that's not reflective of the law, and I don't have a good answer on why a county registrar of voters is getting this wrong. If you fill out the circulator section, and then you list one registered voter on the fill out the line section, then you're good to go. That is the law, and what they're telling you is incorrect. I don't have a better answer than that, and I'm not sure how to go around because that is the person you turn it into at the county, and they should know better. This is based upon California law. What they're telling you is inaccurate.
Yeah, well, I'm not a lawyer. I have been reading the Secretary of State instructions, and that's what it says. But also, my
we're going off the SOS guidebook from 2025, and everything that we're doing is in line with that. And we've run this by the Secretary of State and by the Legislative Affairs Office.
My registrar of voters also tells me that they will only accept signed petitions from one person.
From a what?
From one person. Right.
That's also not accurate. You can do up to 6 per line. We literally did this petition 4 or 5 years ago, and we had it accepted by 35 county registrar voters. It's literally the
Okay,
same document. We also ran this by the SOS, and it's in line with the 2025 guidebook, and we have had lawyers look at it. That's
Okay,
the best.
let me clarify. The signed petition can have up to 6 signatures on it,
Mhm.
but they will only accept those signed petitions from one person. So they
Yeah.
don't, in other words, they don't want a number of different people turning in petitions to their office. They want it to
So-
go through one person.
The law is if you sign out the circulator portion on that document, you can turn it in. If you're a California resident and U.S. citizen, that's the law. If they're telling you something other than that, that's not accurate. We've ran this by lawyers. We've ran this by 35 county registrar of voters. They all accept it, and nobody said what they're saying.
Well, I don't I don't know what to do because I don't want our petitions to be thrown out.
Yeah,
So the other thing is, if you give me your mailing address, I could mail them to you, and then you could turn them in.
Yeah. I will give you the PO box where we have everything mailed, and I'll email you right after this meeting, Christian, and I will get you that address, and you can send it over to us, and then I'll personally take care of it from there.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
I'll get you it's like Fig Garden Drive. I'll get that to you right after the meeting. I promise.
Okay, because I don't want to bother collecting any more signatures if I think they're not going to be accepted. And
That's a good point. I just got to say for everybody listening, I have never heard of this before. Again, we had 35 county registrars do this, and we're working with about 20 other counties right now, and nobody's saying this at all. So I just got to put that out there because people are watching. Everything we told you is fine. It's working. I don't know what's going on in Kristen's neck of the woods. I will work with her, but there's no problems with anybody else. You're the only one. Sorry to do that, but I got to frame this with the amount of calamity it could cause.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry. Do you have any other questions?
Well, I did put something out on on the internet, well, our neighborhood network thing about is it time, raise a question about Calexit. And I got a lot of replies. I got over 4,000 views of this thing. But
Nice.
But a lot of the replies were pretty nasty, I would say.
Oh.
Like telling me to move to Canada or telling me I'm a traitor or, just some pretty nasty things. So I took it down after a while. So I just don't know how popular this is going to be.
Well, I can tell you it's exceptionally popular. So it depends on the people that you're talking with. If we're talking about people 55 to up, you're looking at about a 65% disapproval rate. If we're looking at people who are 45 to 18, we're looking at about 75 approval rates. So this is the statistics back then. Who were you talking to and on what platform? And did they have a military background? Were they kind of from a conservative area? So all the information that we're getting is this is wildly popular. They haven't released a survey this year, and that's because they know that last time we had about half the population supporting this. 32% were for full-blown secession, and about 47.5 were willing to discuss it, meaning they were open to the idea of leaving America. 47.5 is within the margin of error of any survey. Every survey has a 3 to 5% margin of error, which means the surveys in 2017 by Reuters Ipsos and separately the Little Hoover Institute out of Stanford University both said that theoretically 51% of the population was willing to secede. When we look at the fact that we've been covered by Politico, CBS, NBC, San Francisco News, San Diego News, Los Angeles News, Bay Area News, and that we're getting people like ex-officials from the Carter administration, former heads of the California Democratic Party, and they're asking to join, we think it's wildly popular.
I think a lot of older people who, for example, are on Social Security are really worried about losing their benefits. And even if it's, supposed to be legal that no matter what country you live in, if you've earned the benefits, you still get them. Mm-hmm. I think all bets are off with Trump and Musk with their hands, actually in the U.S. Treasury and the Social Security database.
You think Trump's going to cut off Social Security payments to people and will survive a political future?
Well, he'll cut us off in California, is what I'm saying.
Well, what you're suggesting is that for the first time in American history, in about basically a century, a president's going to come on a line and say, you have full constitutional guarantees for these rights, but I'm going to deny them to a U.S. citizen. He's never technically done that before, and nobody's ever proposed that before. So yes, we're talking about hypotheticals, right? So this is a really extreme hypothetical that assumes a whole lot. Additionally, the law is, if you're a U.S. citizen, they got to send you those checks everywhere. What you're talking about, if Trump did that, he'd be basically blowing up the entire legal system. He's never actually, I'm not a big fan of Trump, but he's never actually gone that far. So maybe, but there's a certain amount of conjecturing here that kind of goes, well, this falls into place and that falls into place. I can make the opposite conjecture. He'll never do that. They want us gone. They don't want any problems.
Yeah.
They'll give us everything we want so that we can get out the door as soon as possible because they hate us. The Palisades fire, there's never been an American president who, when Americans were dead, on the ground, homeless, destitute, beside themselves, says, I don't know if I want to help because I'm not sure I like you guys. That's never happened in U.S. history. And there's never been a Speaker of the House like Speaker Johnson who backed him up. And there's never been a survey from the LA Times like 6 months ago that said 48% of Republicans view all of us Californians as not American. Think about that. 6 months ago, half the Republican Party said, I don't see you as Americans. And then the first president in 200 years comes on TV and says, I don't know if I want to help while we got bodies lying around. Those things have never, ever, ever happened before. They're super mega extreme. The Republican Party had an entire annual convention on how California was the anti-America and the worst possible thing and to not be an American. If you've watched Fox News, Breitbart, Newsmax, I'm in the Valley, I see those all the time, and you've watched them for the last 30 years, all they talk is trash on us. Undocumented immigrants, LGBTQ, civil rights, paying for abortions. We mismanage our money and we don't know how to do anything right? That's the message. So I think when you take all those facts in, it's more likely that they will kick us in the ass on the way out the door and never want us to come back.
Okay, but just think of Trump's dreams of acquiring Greenland and making Canada a 51st state. He wants to expand the United States. Do you think he really wants to lose, the most prosperous state in the nation?
Yeah, I absolutely do for this reason. One, we get this question a lot. Republicans aren't exactly smart on economics. I was a Republican. I left in 2014 because I thought Romney was racist. I never even heard of Trump. That's why Romney's like, Trump's racist. I'm like, you dropped the Latin vote from 50 to 20% and wouldn't acknowledge that you spoke Spanish or had any ties to Mexico. That's xenophobia, buddy. I see right through you. So let's go back to this. The Republican Party literally had a conference when Trump was president in Congress where they said, California's the welfare queen. And we subsidize them because they have undocumented immigrants and they can't manage their forest fires. They literally said that. They had an entire conference. They released reports. Donald Trump said nothing to condemn them or contradict it at all. It was public. In fact, it was so egregious that the LA Times and San Francisco Chronicle had to do editorials where they're going, what the hell are you talking about? It's the complete opposite of this. How can one party have an entire conference and everybody's on board with saying the opposite? Well, maybe because that's all they've ever heard. The question I ask everybody is they go, I'm not sure Republicans vote for this. Show me or name one Republican in the last 3 decades on any TV channel or any news station. Just name one person who said California's awesome at business. Turns out that they subsidize us even though they have undocumented immigrants, and they subsidize us even though they can't manage the forest fires, and they're actually good at business. Turns out we Republicans are not as good at business as them. Name one person who's done that in 3 decades. Nobody can do that. And so when I say here, Republicans are not going to let us go because the cash cow, we go, what's that based upon? When have they ever said that? And what national conference did they have where they said that? Because I can provide evidence of they did a national conference that said the total opposite, even though it's madness. And I could provide 3 decades of information where they said the total opposite, even though it's madness. Trump ruined the American economy. And yet they seem to think that he's great for money. There you go, right? He started a trade war with China. If you talk to the 1%ers here in California, the people with billions of dollars, they hate Trump because of his trade war with China. That was ruinous economically for us. It was fine for America, But a lot of people with billions of dollars lost it. So when you're talking to people who have money here, and you're saying Trump knows how to run the economy, they're going based on what? So there's just not a whole lot of evidence to back that up that Republicans secretly know and have yet to say over 3 decades, even though they've given conferences saying the total opposite, that actually they love us and recognize we support them. I mean, there's just no evidence that they're aware of that. If I'm wrong, please provide me that evidence. Name that person, name that conference, name that speech. I'll wait.
Okay. I have another question. This one is more hypothetical.
Sure, then we'll go to
But
another person.
If we someday do become a sovereign
Yeah.
nation, don't you think that a lot of businesses would leave California, or
Absolutely not.
big businesses, because of less taxes in the other states? Less
So
taxes, less regulation.
yeah, so I gotta say, you've asked these questions before and we've answered them. So
I don't think I've asked that one, and I'm sorry if I
okay,
missed it. I wasn't able to
sure.
log on last week.
So businesses will come flooding into California, the total opposite of what you suggested for the opposite of that. So here's the reason why. When we go to businesses and we say no business income taxes ever again, no state income business taxes, all businesses say that would be wonderful. And then when we say, how about 50% less regulations, 50% less regulatory paperwork, 50% less staff to do paperwork, because when we're independent, all your federal regulation is gone. California already does everything the federal government does. For example, my best example, OSHA and Cal OSHA. All business people have to fill out one form for federal OSHA and one form for California OSHA. If we're independent, all the federal paperwork goes away. That's a 50% paperwork reduction and no state business income taxes. When we tell businesses that, and we've talked about 30 of them over the last decade, they go, my God, that would be a boom, and people would come back. Additionally, when we look at the fact that California loses sales on international trade because they have to get a 5 to 7 year waiting period for approval, that's horrible for all ag businesses, all businesses who sell laptops, all businesses who sell cell phones. When Barack Obama lied to the American people and the world and then decided it was okay to spy on world leaders like German Prime Minister Angela Merkel, California lost $6 billion in sales of smartphones and laptops. Turns out that when America has a horrible image and part of a genocide or maybe invading another country or getting 500,000 Muslims killed for no reason, it kind of turns people off. California is the #1 FDI. That means foreign direct investment #1. Meaning we're the most attractive place in the entire planet and in all of America for foreign direct investment. That's on the California government website, been there about 10 years. When you look at that and you have America do horrible things on the international stage, we get hurt first. So when we can have trade deals that we don't have to wait 5 to 7 years for approval, and when we have tech products in Silicon Valley and Hollywood and ag, our top 3 largest export industries, and there's no loss of sales, and we're not subsidizing other states, and we cut business income taxes, and we reduce the regulatory overhead by 50%, you're talking about a massive economic boom, and every single business leader that we've talked to has said yes.
So why did Tesla move their headquarters to Texas?
Tesla moved, well, I'll point out that's another question. We got to go to another person, but Tesla left the headquarters because of COVID regulations, not because of general California regulations. He was fine before COVID, and he specifically said he left because of COVID. That was a specific period, and that's what he said. I'd also point out that Elon Musk had to admit 1 year after he left to Texas that literally nobody from California followed him, and that he was shocked because he thought a lot of people would follow him and nobody followed him at all. And he was shocked, and they all said, I'm not leaving California. Good luck to you. So next question, we got to move on to Stanley. It's your turn, and then we'll go to Susan. Stanley, what questions do you have, sir?
Well, you've answered some of them. I see that California has more Republicans than any other state in the union, just based on our size, even more than Texas. And we do have the image, and rightly so, that it is overly difficult to get through regulations to especially do big projects. Obviously, speed trains and, energy. And so I like where you're going, and I think that we have to have an appeal of the less regulations. And I don't think we can get away with just saying less federal, obviously zero federal regulations. I think we have to have a little bit of an independent path or a third way between one hand the extreme Republican and one hand the more establishment Democrat. That although I will say Sacramento is now admitting it's too difficult to get things built here. I noticed that that's coming out, and so I guess I've been pretty active in some of the Orange County Democrat associations, and we have a lot of local ones. And I don't see this as being very popular. I'm not sure. I haven't really felt it out yet. That's why I'm getting to know you and getting to know this movement, whether it's very appealing to them or not. And so I guess in the framework of a bipartisan world, which I don't like, and I'd like us to be able to sail away from some of that. How do we fare between your more traditional Democrat Californians and your more traditional Republican Californians?
So let me answer a couple of those. The speed train lost a lot of money because farmers in Tulare and Kings County sued the high-speed rail after it was already approved and held it up in legal limbo for 2 years. You'll never hear that on Fox News. That's when it started going off the rails with expense. Republicans will never mention that. They also won't mention that Governor Schwarzenegger was a Republican and personally approved of it. So you'll never hear those two things. Just point that out. Additionally, when we talk about how to make Sacramento better, it's tough to build things in California. I work for the state government. I actually have worked for the California Department of Transportation for 25 years, and I worked in Sacramento for 6 years. Half the time, it's because we don't get to make the decisions on our own in Sacramento. There's a federal regulatory body that we've got to run something by. So when you go, hey, I want to do this, a lot of politicians throw their hands up in the air. One of those needs to end. 1 second. Okay, so a lot of people, when we run this by them, and I'm in the Valley, okay, half my family's Republican. Okay,
me
so
too.
I don't get a choice. So I'm not, but I've been around it. When we talk about how, if there was no federal government for Sacramento politicians to blame, would it be easier to hold them account or not as easy? And they go, hold on, you're saying that no Sacramento politician gets to go, there's federal regulations and I can't do it, guys. Sorry, don't blame me. And that's wiped out and we wouldn't have a more effective government. All of them see right through that. They go, yeah, of course, if they can't blame anybody, if those squirrely, slimy politicians in SAC can't blame anybody, and it's literally just up to SAC, you have a lot more representation and accountability automatically. Secondly, I'd always ask conservatives, so, because a lot of conservatives don't think the California government works well. And I go, okay. I was in a room, there was 30 conservatives. I said, how many of you have traveled to Washington, D.C. in your lifetime? Raise your hand. Out of a group of 30, maybe 5. And I would say, how many of you have traveled to Sacramento in your lifetime? 29 out of 30 raised their hand. And I go, how many of you traveled to D.C. twice in your lifetime? 2 out of 30. How many of you traveled to Sacramento twice in your lifetime? 30 out of 30. How many have traveled to Sacramento 3 times, 4 times, 5 times? 29 out of 30. So is the government more effective that you can go visit? I'm sorry, I got to mute. Someone's typing. I got to mute that. Sorry. Let me.
I'll stop typing.
Okay, sorry. When we talk about it that way, even Republicans admit, and not one Republican has disagreed, that if you're only 3 hours away from the Capitol, someone's making a bunch of noise. Let me. Okay, so when you can visit your capital in 3 hours instead of having to buy a flight, and when you have it where 30 out of 30 people have gone to Sacramento 5 times in their life and only 2 out of 30 have gone to DC twice in their life, you're automatically seeing the evidence of better accountability. No Republican ever has disagreed with me on that. Additionally, when we're talking about 50% regulation, none of them disagree. And when we're talking about getting rid of all your business income tax, they're like excited. They're excited. I know Republican millionaires. I know Leo Zaki. He's a 500 millionaire, ran for Republic, et cetera. They're Republicans, yes, and they're maybe not so big on California values, but they're about business, and they understand less regulation, lower taxes, more sales equals lots more money, period. Every single one of them have backed that up. I'd also point out that a lot of these conservative areas aren't actually conservative. So a lot of people will say Orange County's Republican, San Diego's. No, it's not. I understand that they voted for Trump this time, but if you look at the last 10 to 15 years of election history, the Valley, Orange County, and San Diego have been gradually going more blue because of this group of people called Latinos who happen to outbreed Caucasian people. I'm one, so I'll say it. And typically Latin people in urban areas become liberal. So the projections are that you're going to have more urbanized Latin people in the future, and so that they'll all be coming blue. I've had some of my conservative colleagues say, Trump won these areas. Look, Trump won half of California. I go, that's because you're showing the red and blue map. There's only two options. Show me the color gradation by change map, where there's 5 color options. Then the picture changes. California goes from light blue to light pink. Orange County goes from light blue to light pink. If you talk to Republicans, they're acting like we were hardcore blue and they swung at hardcore red. Nothing like that ever happened. He barely pushed it over the median line. And when you go from light blue to light pink, it means it could be switched back the very next election. That is
Absolutely.
not considered a solid win at all.
Yeah, no, I get it. I think this idea of really pushing that government will work better is really going to be important. That's all I can say, because there's a lot of frustration on both sides of the aisle.
Stanley, we want to talk to you more. Can you email? Do you have my email?
Can you email me?
Can you email me your phone number, and I'd like to call you later.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you have any other questions, Stanley?
No, for now. One last one. How many signed petitions do we have? Is this the big push? Or where are we at with that?
So this is not the big push. This is the moderate push. We've given out the email to, I don't know, maybe 35,000 people on average. They say they have about 3 to 6 people that are passing the petition out. So we estimate about 90 to 120,000 as of about a week and a half ago. I'd say it's more in the 105 to 110,000. Additionally, we're putting a counter up. So when we get to 200,000, we can get the media. A lot of media people have approached us and said, when you get to 200,000, we'll do an hour-long show on you, because basically that's seen as, oh my God, you might actually pull this off. Additionally, as we've been talking about, and we need to do a better job keeping everybody updated, we've brought on board Xavier Mitchell. I'm sorry, I should say Sir Dr. Xavier Mitchell. This guy's been doing all the work on that. I've barely done it. Xavier Mitchell is a multimillionaire. He lives in Calabasas, which is where the Kardashians live. He lives on the top.
I grew up there.
Yeah. He lives on the top of a hill overlooking Calabasas Valley. We went to his place. It's in a gated community in Calabasas, and then you go in a mile, and then his place is a mile off in a different direction with his own paved road to the top of the mountain. He owns 6 publicly traded companies. He also owns a nonprofit out of San Diego that's been recognized by California, and he's good friends with Shirley Weber, who's the 3rd highest ranking California politician. He's agreed to become the CEO of this organization. We are going to be launching what's called a pitch deck. That's when you're a rich person and you want to approach other rich people and ask for investment. Additionally, we'll be launching a Cali coin cryptocurrency and continuing to ask for donations. Additionally, X, as we call him, I call him Professor X. I grew up on X-Men, so that's a little fanboy there. He has already done an interview with Politico and an interview with San Francisco Chronicle. The moment that we mentioned that he was on board, they didn't want to interview me or Jason anymore, and they wanted to do an hour-long interview with him. We think, and I've long predicted it's this, I'm supposed to be crazy. He's supposed to be crazy. I'm not supposed to be able to answer questions. You should be asking questions, and I should give you some sort of mumbo-jumbo answer, and you go, wow, this guy's brain dead. I shouldn't be able to talk in policy and dollar figures and based upon a solid understanding of government, but I can. So when we have a multimillionaire with 6 publicly traded companies who's wildly successful hanging out with us, it kind of defies the stereotype. The concept is that we must all be nutbag insane. Why is a multimillionaire who's successful at business hanging out with us? Why are you guys still here? Stanley, how come you haven't turned off the video and gone, this guy's nuts, he couldn't even answer my questions? Maybe it's because I do know policy. I do know history. I do know government. We have thought this out. This is legal. Well, like I was talking about on TikTok, the media still likes to, not all of them, San Francisco was great, but most of the media will still say secession's legal, period. And they will not mention Texas versus White. That's a giveaway. That's a red flag. If they do mention Texas versus White, they'll say Texas versus White says secession's illegal, period. Discussion over. That's also a lie. Texas versus White says you can secede with consent. They will not mention Erwin Chemerinsky, the most cited legal expert in all of America, founder of 2 University of California law schools, which is more than anybody else, and the most cited constitutional scholar in all of California, who also wrote a book last year that said America's broken and secession may be the only way out. He was asked about Calexit in 2017 and said a simple majority vote could qualify for consent. So they will not mention Chemerinsky. They'll talk about a guy called David A. Carrillo out of UC Berkeley, who's not as well respected as Chemerinsky. And he'll come on online and say, secession's legal, period. I'm a top constitutional scholar. And which case I go, how come you couldn't mention Texas versus White if you're a top constitutional scholar? And how come you couldn't mention that consent is in the language in Texas versus White if you're a top constitutional scholar? So I don't want to go down conspiracy avenue. I'll just point out they won't mention Texas versus White. They won't mention consent to the states, and they won't mention the Erwin Chemerinsky opinion, which basically give us a clear legal path. I'll leave it to you to explain why, when I've said that the 35 reporters, only one of them could print it. I'm not going to explain that. Then we go down conspiracy avenue, which I won't do. Just why do you think 27 reporters couldn't mention these basic facts when I told every single one of them, and I've never said anything opposite of that? And yet none of them could print that except for one. Who knows? Who knows? Who knows the answer to these things?
Well, one thing's for sure. I mean, what Trump is doing is going to allow a lot more latitude towards any kind of thinking, and I think the timing couldn't be better.
You're right. It's called the Grand Epiphany. We say this is the best time for Calexit.
Absolutely.
Oh, why do you think this is the best time for Calexit, Stanley? In your opinion, unedited, unaltered. Why?
Well, because you have an unprecedented decoupling, dismantling of our federal government that looks like we're headed towards just government not working very well. We also have the entire world. I deal with Thailand a bit. I'm on the phone with them after this. The entire world sees what we'll call the non-MAGA world sees here. And everyone but the 77 million Republicans that voted for him versus the 8 billion in the world seem to be on a different reality plane. And we're headed for, we're headed, this can't end well. And honestly, I don't think California can make it right now, the path we're headed on, because we have a federal government that hates us. We have a ton of construction we've got to do. We've got climate construction. We've got so much construction to do. And we're really good friends with both Canada and Mexico. And we're going to need them. And I think we're going to need a very robust immigration policy to be able to build the infrastructure and to be the California dream. So this is, we're on an unsustainable path right now, the way we're joined in. But am I skeptical? I can't imagine.
Skeptical.
I kind of agree with Christine. I think even though they hate us, even though they spend half their time telling the world that they want to build a fence around California and keep us out, and I mean, just horrible stuff. I hear unbelievable stuff. And I do think economically they know they're in for a world of hurt if we separate. But
I always ask people, where's the evidence of that? No offense, but where's the evidence that the Republicans secretly are aware of this? Name the one Republican who said that, or a speech, or a document, or a meeting.
No,
and you even have
it's the opposite. You're right. Certainly, it's the opposite that they're saying. The further we can go from California, the better. There's no question.
So I'm just going. I hear this, but I'm like, we're talking about 600 to 700 politicians over a 30-year period in 50 states, and not one of them has ever said this, including Trump. So,
right,
where's the evidence? I got to tell you, I was a Republican. I left in 2014 because
Wow.
Romney was racist against Latin people. I had no idea Trump was going to come on board, but I said in 2014, this is a white supremacy party. I can already see that, and I'm getting out. I called it. Boy, did I call it right. There was a lot of liberals who go, "You're a Republican? What?" And I go, "Yeah, I left because Romney was racist, and I knew the party was going towards white supremacy." People are like, "How did you see that before everybody else?" Because of pay attention.
Oh, it's been there since Barry Goldwater. Really.
Thank you. It's been there since yeah. Thank you. Why did Ronald Reagan announce his campaign for presidency in the same county where two Jewish men were murdered trying to register African American people to vote? He announced his presidential campaign. There's about 1,000 counties. He picked the one where Jewish people were murdered by the KKK for registering black people to vote. And that's the county where he announced he's running for president. And I'm supposed to believe that's just a random chance coincidence. No, sir. I'm not that stupid. I don't believe that. I also don't think that when George Bush Sr., the decent one, ran the Willie Horton ad, where it was a black man coming out of prison. He said, "Watch out, a black man could come into your house." That was racist too.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
No, it's underlining everything. There's no question.
Yeah.
That's it's a big piece. It's a big coalition. I mean, it's got these technocrats that want to build a dissolve nation states, which that's why this also is a good timing. They really want to dissolve the nation state and just have these techno feudal, regions that I'll live under Tesla, you'll live under, however they plan to do this through Peter Thiel. So
Peter Thiel
no
backs
question.
Calexit,
They have a broad coalition. We need to build a broad coalition. I think the idea of a better working government and not just pair up with Sacramento, but be a little bit of, we want to see the ability to grow and we have a tremendous amount of building and infrastructure we've got to do. It ain't going to happen right now the way it's set up. It's just not going to happen.
Absolutely. You're totally right. Want to back you up on that. And were you going to say something?
I was actually just on a whole other topic, really. I was going to say that it's been coming to my awareness that there are people who feel like they might be able to use some sort of coaching for talking with folks about Calexit and the need to Calexit, how to approach people in, kind of a way that's not going to just turn them off immediately or bring out the hostility. And we had a person on the TikTok live who was asking, she said she works in a company with all women. And we found that women of California, by and large, are more readily supportive of Calexit right out the gate when learning about it than any other demographic.
Yeah, especially educated women. The more educated you are, the more likely you are to back Calexit if you're a female in California.
Out of every 10 well-educated California women that we come across and talk with about Calexit, only like maybe 2 or 3 aren't readily for it right away. And then, through question and answer, usually they're, they ask questions, we give answers, and then they're on board.
Is that, do you think, because of the misogyny of the current regime, or do you
It's
think
because
there's
abortion
something
was overturned. It's because abortion was overturned. And so a lot of women never thought abortion would be overturned and had to suddenly come to a shocking reality that many of them had never thought of. And they'd been around for maybe 40 to 60 years. They had an idea of America that goes back to the 1970s, about half a century. And then one day they're told, your concept and rights is all garbage, and everything you thought was permanent, it could just be taken away at a moment's notice. That shocked the hell out of a lot of intelligent women. We've been saying that America's falling apart. You're tied to a country full of people who like Trump, and that will have real impacts on your civil rights. We've been saying that since 2016. Nobody wanted to hear that. Then when women's rights started being taken away, a lot of women were like, oh my God, it's like what they said is coming true. Well, yeah. They did it to Latin people first, right? Because they're more foreign. And then they go after you do that, then you go after women, just like the guy in Germany. He didn't go after Jewish people first. He went after the communists.
Right.
Then he
Oh,
went after the
absolutely.
handicapped.
Yeah.
And then when people stopped complaining, then he went after the Jewish people. So he worked his way up to it. I'm like, oh, Trump talks trash on the Muslims, talks trash on the Latin people. We're cool. Move it up to all women, right? Because I didn't get a big enough pushback. So that's that. I do want to point out, you were asking about the Republicans in California.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of them. Here's the thing. The only place where the Republicans outnumber progressives in California is the top fifth or the Jefferson area. That's basically, you got to go up to the top northern fifth of California.
Right.
That's the only place where they overwhelmingly outnumber us. If you look at what's called the economic activity map of California, you'll see basically the economy's dead there. So any place where there's an actual economic activity, they're not in control of anything. And that includes Orange County, San Diego, and the Central Valley. Additionally, I have conservative members in my family who talk trash on California all the time. If you hate California that much and you're conservative, you've already left. We've lost so many conservatives, we've lost a congressional seat. So anybody who's still here and hasn't left, you're not going to leave for this reason.
No, they're not gonna leave.
You have a daughter here, a son, a grandchild, a business, a wife, a husband, a significant other. You're going to complain, but you ain't going anywhere, because if you were, you'd already left.
I would also point out population density seems to have a pretty big part in the whole thing. So areas where like Jefferson area, far north, not only is the economy kind of dead, but the population density is really, really low. That means that, well, we've got 350 people here, and, maybe like 180 of them are Republicans. So now it's majority Republican. But ultimately, you're just talking about in an area of like 350 people. Whereas LA, San Francisco, you're talking millions and millions of people. And
Right.
maybe a smattering of, and we're like here in Fresno, Marcus's folks, being Republican voter, most of Fresno is not Republican voting. And so their votes are largely outweighed by the rest of Fresno.
Yeah, for sure, majority. You do have regions that are very dense, though, like Kevin McCarthy's Bakersfield or County, I think, or Kern County. That's pretty thick.
You named the only one in California that's not in the top fifth and is Republican majority controlled. It's Bakersfield. That's basically it. I challenge you to name another city.
Well, yeah.
I'm in the Valley. By the way, I'm born and raised here, so I know the Valley in and out. I'm 47 years old. I've covered politics for 25 years. Been born here. I know the Valley better than anyone.
And knowing Bakersfield well enough, my biological mother's parents moved from Texas and had a humongous strawberry farm here in California. And then they also had property in Bakersfield. And that was because a lot of the people that they knew and grew up with in Texas also had property over there. So, Texas doesn't want Californians coming in and Californiaizing or Californiaizing their Texas.
Oh, they're so bad.
But they've been doing it to us for so long.
Yeah.
Since the Okies, yeah.
I'm part Okie, absolutely. My dad and my grandmother came from Oklahoma and then was in coal mining country in Wyoming before they moved here to Fresno. So I know exactly, Grapes of Wrath. I know exactly what you're talking about. We got to move on to Susan, if that's okay. Want to make sure we get everybody. Susan, thank you, Stanley. We'll do another round. Just want to make sure that we're trying to get everybody here. Rich, we see you here. If you want questions, you got to come on. Susan, what questions do you have? Any question at all? We are here.
Yes,
At your disposal.
I have many. So the first thing is about these meetings. You're having meetings on Sundays. When do they start? I logged in at 6:01 and the conversation was always going on. So when do they start actually?
They typically start at 6. So the TikTok group is at 7, and these meetings on StreamYard or Zoom are typically at 6. We started a little bit early, and we
Okay.
were streaming TikTok, but we did start this meeting officially on time.
Yeah, this
Okay,
week.
yeah, I mean, it was in the middle of a sentence, so I never knew what. So there's no general opening about like what's going on. Like,
We're going to do that after questions. So when I started taking questions, I said we'll take everybody's questions and I'll do a general update. I'm sorry, I should have said that louder.
and
We're going
how
to do a
long?
general.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm watching it get dark, and I need to. I mean, it's going to be getting dark at some point, and I have to go do a
Sure.
couple things before it gets dark. But okay, so if I were to log on this, whatever this platform is, at 6 in the evening, I would be able to get information.
So new links have to be made for every show. You'll get a
Right.
mass email from us.
Yeah. Okay.
That will give you a link, and you just click on the link like now. And we're doing that every week for Sunday at 6 o'clock. And I
Okay. So
apologize.
what I was actually looking, I mean, this is the first time I've been on this. I think I tried last week. I couldn't. I don't know. I only had the TikTok thing, and I don't have TikTok, so I couldn't get on. But so there's a couple questions. One is, It sounds like, I think, that there's a proposition possibly on the ballot. It got something to allow us to get signatures. Is that true? That got enough of something?
Yes.
Okay. And so now we can get signatures.
Correct.
How are you getting signatures? Like, if I wanted to go collect signatures, how could I do that?
You have the petition, you print it out, and then you go and collect signatures after watching the training video that's available on the same page. You download the petition.
Okay. And where do I find the petition?
I'll re-email you. So there's one page that we've sent out to everybody, and it has a copy of the petition and the training videos on it, but I'll resend it to you. Actually, Susan, can you email me again? Do you have my email, Susan? And I'll get that to you.
I mean, I got email about this meeting, so I email you back to that email?
Yes, please. Yes.
Okay. So the petition is on a page, and then we print it out, and we just go set up a table someplace and do it. And is there talking points? Is that part of the training part? Is there a link to a training video?
Absolutely. There's links to about 30 training videos
Okay.
there, additionally to a couple major videos that'll walk you through how to collect signatures, how to approach people, and all of the talking points. Additionally, we have a 200-page manual. A lot of people didn't want to read that. So we're coming out with a one-page list of the top answers to the top questions, and that should be out in about a week, but the videos are available. I'm going to go ahead and find that page. Oh, actually, it's here. I don't know. I'm going to post this up. So if anybody can see this, I'm going to put it in the private chat. If anybody can, here's the link.
Okay.
I'm also going to do this in banners so everybody can see. So calexitnow.org, Calexit petition ready for download. If you go to Google and you type in calexitnow.org and then petition for download, enough people have downloaded it now that it's the top of the search of the Google rankings or search engine. And you can easily find it there. This is the main way, is we're giving it to everybody and we're saying you can watch the videos, you print it out, and then you can go out. Now we're planning on doing better coordination. The reason why it's taken so long is that we have found two things. When you tell people wrong information and they go do it and it didn't work out, they're really mad and they quit. So you don't want to do that. Two, when you pick a leader and then they snap and yell at somebody and become emotionally unstable, that's really bad too, and it causes people to quit. So we needed to make sure we had all the right information and we had emotionally stable leaders in every region. We've now collected a list of about 20 people representing every major metro area who are emotionally stable, and we've vetted. He's done all the work for that. And we're about ready to launch that infrastructure within about 1 to 2 weeks. It's taken us a while because we played the game fast and loose last time, and we gave people bad instructions, and they go, "You mean my signature's invalidated? What the hell?" And we found out it's better to make them wait a week and a half than give them information 2 days later that's wrong and come up with bad leaders. So we've taken longer than it should have, but that's what's going on. There'll be leadership coming on. And all of it is to support you on the ground. So while they're leaders and while I'm the spokesperson, as we've always said, and Jay's going to back me up here, it's about you. It's not about us. You on the ground are the most important person. And yeah, there's training, but what we've really found is, I'm sorry, this is just something we found. Anybody who asks more than 2 questions is likely never going to say yes. That's what we found. So if they come up to you and they'll have like a, "What about this?" What about that? Yeah, okay. Then they sign. If it's more than 2 questions, we found it's like a 97% chance you'll never convince them. They'll have question 3, question 4, question 5, question 6, question 7. Well, what about question 13 to 15? They're never going to say yes. So, and if you do get somebody like that, send them my way. I'll handle that.
I
So
mean, they have something they can read, right? The actual petition is how long that people are signing?
2 pages. It's 11 by 17 printed, and it's double-sided.
Okay. So, okay. And then at some point we'll get a list of, I'm in the LA area.
Yes.
So I would get a person that I could contact about.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah, they're called regional
coordinating.
directors.
Okay.
Jay's going to be moving down to LA personally soon. We're not sure yet. And we're having regional directors in the Bay Area, Sacramento, Central Valley, San Diego, and the Los Angeles metro region. We might have one in the Inland Empire. And then we have special staff on that, lawyers, teacher advisory group, lawyer advisory group, engineering advisory group, doctors advisory group. We're going to be launching all that very soon. Because we're supposed to be nincompoops, right? So we launch something and somebody acts crazy or something's wrong or something appears to fall down. That's exactly what the media is looking for. Go, see, idiots. So we said, we're going to take longer to make sure there isn't. We're going to make mistakes, but not nincompoop mistakes. We want only intelligent mistakes. Like anybody would have made that mistake.
Okay. And the area that I'm in, the LA area, that includes Orange County, or is Orange County separate?
Orange County is considered LA.
Okay.
I understand it may not be, but it just geographically, we just did that.
Right. I lived in Orange County for a long time, and they have a very robust Democratic club, and I'm having trouble here in LA finding anything. I'm in North LA though, so I'm in northern. I'm still in the city. I'm in
Hollywood,
the city.
West Hollywood, Santa Monica. We found a ton of support out of the Hollywood area, West Hollywood area, and Santa Monica.
So I'm in the northeast area, which is a little bit funny. It's a funny area. So
like the Pasadena?
North of Pasadena.
Oh.
So yeah, Pasadena. I love Pasadena.
Sun Valley.
I'm near Sun Valley. I'm in Shadow Hills, which is a small little. It's a rural area. It's zoned rural. People have horses. Today, when we took a walk, pigs and goats. It's a very little weird place, but Pasadena and Burbank is nearby, and I'm still having trouble connecting with. I'm starting to get like indivisible groups, but anyway. So
West Hollywood, Santa Monica. Try there.
That's far. I mean, can be 2 to 3 hours away. Seriously. So
call me and I'll work with you to find another location.
Pasadena is fine. That's fine. We went to a march in Pasadena yesterday, so that worked out fine. Okay, so I understand. I'll go to that website. I'll download the petition. I will read it very carefully.
Yes,
I'll do some of the trainings.
Yes, ma'am.
And I mean the questions that people have in some ways seem almost irrelevant to what's going on. Like if you look at what's going on, everything is up in the air. Nobody has any, there's no, I mean, if he's firing air traffic controllers and, the people that predict the weather, you think you're going to be able to open your phone and get the weather anymore? No.
Exactly.
If he's doing that and he gets away with it, if in fact he does, which, we don't know, the point is I don't want to move to Canada, but that is another, I mean, as an old person, they don't want you, but I have a daughter there, so she escaped. So, I'm definitely interested in this particular possibility. And my impression is the petition just asks California to look at the possibility, correct? I mean, it doesn't say, yes, we're seceding tomorrow if it passes.
No, because legally,
how would we do it, correct?
Yes, and it places a non-binding legal vote in a future election, which is not legally binding.
Right.
It means it's a plebiscite, basically a poll on a major government decision. The actual legal mechanism is when we send a representative from California to ask for permission to leave from Congress, hence Texas versus White, consent, and the Chemerinsky principle of 51%.
Right. I mean, and, I feel like you do that, Trump, he's very unpredictable. He's very bizarre. very mentally ill, you know, all of that, that he could easily say, oh yeah, good riddance, you know, like I'm not saying that that's what happened, because who the hell knows what he would do ever. It doesn't even matter what he says. Nothing matters what he says, but you never know. I mean, this may be the time.
He likes to present himself as a savior, a godlike figure.
Yeah.
And that was the push for abortion. So he doesn't really push or talk about the abortion win now, because I think there was a lot of blowback. But if you listen to him beforehand, the way that he spoke about it was, nobody can solve this evil problem that's gone on from the 70s except for me. You Republicans could never solve this problem out of 30, 40, 50 years. I, your God figure, have come to save you, and I will undo this, me alone. So, okay, he did that for abortion, and it was a big Republican win. He realized it wasn't so good national scale, so he walked back his talking points about after he did it. So here's another one. How would you Republicans like to get rid of the place that produces Nancy Pelosi, Maxine Waters?
Right,
Adam
exactly.
Schiff? All the boogeymen you watch on Fox TV and Newsmax, gone. All their crazy ideas, gone. All that money for the Dem crazy person, gone. I, Trump, saved America for the Republican Party by getting rid of California because I am your God savior.
Well, if they got rid of our electoral college votes, I mean, that would be a problem. And that is something that people in other parts of the country are saying. They're going like, wait a minute, if you leave, where does that leave New York? Where does that leave Maine? Where does that leave Connecticut? You know, and, you know, I mean, there's sort of just a self-preservation kind of thing. But the other thing, when he talks about let's make Canada the 51st state, that is the same population as California. All of a sudden, the Democrats would win everything if California became.
So there is a redistribution process that is actually laid out for redistributing electoral votes. And having done the math, Marcus realized that it would nearly be an exact wash. Maybe one side might end up with 1 point, like more than the other. But other than that, pretty much a near wash.
So if California left, you're saying that they would redo everything as opposed to just
they have to redistribute.
I mean, okay, that's what I mean. But they would reconfigure the representatives.
Yes, and they do this every 10 years with the census. So.
Right. But that is true. But I understand what you mean now. Yeah.
This has been around since the 1870s. Again, this is another thing the media will never mention. Told 35 reporters, none of them mention it. Don't know why. A lot of people conjecture California's gone. That means you swing the whole thing red. That's not true. The law's been out there since 1870, so basically 100 years, and it says you redistribute. So if California disappears, all of its votes get redistributed to the 10 next most populous states. Half of those are liberal, half of those are conservative. This has been the law for a century. We also do this every 10 years. I don't know why the media can't inform people accurately about what's been known.
So those 52 electoral votes and congressional districts and all that, they don't just subtract them from the whole. They actually have to have 438 or whatever.
Yeah, so by law, you have a fixed number of electoral college votes, and by law, you have a fixed number of congressional seats. I think it was fixed somewhere in the 1970s. They kept increasing Congress, and somewhere in the 70s they go, we can't do this anymore. So they capped it. Basically what happens is California's portion of all those things are redistributed to the 10 next most populous states. If you go online and look up states by population, you'll see it's half liberal, half conservative, meaning we basically make no effect on the American electorate once we leave.
Okay. And is that in the talking points? I mean, I don't know if anybody cares about that, but I have relatives all over the country who've said that. But so, I mean, is that because that is, like I have relatives everywhere. I don't have any relatives in California. Everybody's back east, and so
I'm going to add it to the talking points.
Yeah, I mean that's
another thing that I wanted to bring up a little bit ago is the whole Social Security thing. Now, we all recognize what's going on with the federal government and Doge and them, accessing things, the age of appeasement, where it's like, okay, I want to keep my job, so I'm just going to bow down and lick Trump's boots. Yeah. So given everything that we're seeing and everything we're knowing as fact, right now happening before our very eyes, do we really think that it's totally wholly impossible that they will do things like do away with Social Security because that's socialism, which is communism, and that belongs to California, not America? Do we think that they'll do things like that, or do we think that they'll maybe do things like different from what they're doing right now?
I feel like it's very unpredictable. You know, if you're stupid enough to fire air traffic controllers, you know, I mean that's just such an example, right? You're
Then he's
stupid
probably
enough,
stupid enough to tank his own thing,
right?
right?
But I don't think he cares. Like what is becoming apparent to me is that he doesn't care if it's unpopular. He doesn't care at all, and that is scary. What does he think is going to happen? He thinks there's not going to be elections coming up. Is he really going to? I mean, he has, you know, introduced. I can't remember what form it was. I don't know if it was an executive order or whatever, but it was one of these things where, you know, if you want to challenge any of my executive orders, you have to pay up front or something. I mean, some weird thing. We don't know what's going to happen, and you know, I don't think he cares whether getting rid of Social Security. Now, Social Security is my money. It's my money and my employer's money. You know, it's not their money. It is separate. It's not part of the general fund. I don't know why he thinks he has anything to do with it, or anybody has anything to do with it.
Well, that's because Congress always dips their hands into it and says that it's not the people's money, it's the government's money. So then Trump comes along and says, well, hey, look at that legal precedent for me to go and dip into the piggy bank and maybe even just bust it open.
Yeah, it's hard to know. I depend on Social Security a lot. You know, it's half of my income. So, you know, I mean, you know, that is a very scary thing, but I don't, you know, I just feel like we need to get out.
So what I was trying to get at is, like, from a smart and sane, reasonable person's point of view, it stands to reason that Trump shouldn't undo Social Security or do away with it, because that would be detrimental to him and so many people and blah, 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 blah. Now, we have to remember, Trump is neither sane nor rational. So expecting sanity from the insane is actually insane.
Right, exactly. But it's good to have the talking points. I mean,
expect insanity from the insane. Expect them to be insane. You were just saying, he doesn't seem to care about anything. He doesn't care if it's a unpopular thing. He doesn't care.
So, I mean, they've done polls where
reality, everyone who is living day to day, you know, check to check, Social Security cut to Social Security cut, it is actually pretty reasonable to think that he probably could do away with Social Security.
I mean,
would you stay in the United States of America long enough to find out the hard way whether or not he's going to do that? Expect insanity from an insane person.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, but I'll look at so what I'm going to do is look at the talking points and look at the petition and look at the training videos, and then I will come on next week and then in the next 2 weeks you'll have those leadership.
Yeah. We expect a lot of things to be announced in the next 2 weeks. And of course, if you have any questions, please come back, please ask. That's why we're doing these regular meetings. You can call and email, but we're going to make sure that we're here every Sunday at 6 and for this, and then there'll be a TikTok meeting usually at 7. Today's was at 5. So we're doing different formats to get different audiences. We're here for your questions. When it comes to Social Security, the law is they have to give it to you anywhere in the world as long as you're a U.S. citizen. No one's talking about getting up their U.S. citizenship. We're talking about people becoming dual citizens. If we're talking about Trump's going to be so crazy as to blow up Social Security, the fact still comes that California is a donor state. We don't need America. It's a financial loss being part of America. We can literally cover everything that we lose instantaneously on our own with more money. That's been widely proved. And if you're talking about talking points, we'll get it to you. And we're working. But I'm going to repeat something. We're finding most people don't need them. They need one or two. And then that's it.
Right. But different people may need different ones.
So, sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. And the other thing I want to say is I'm an old person. I'm in my 70s, and I have lots of friends. I have friends that are older than me, and they are the ones that are interested in this. A lot of my friends are. So
Exactly.
only young people. It's not just only young.
No, it's not. No, it's not. That's why we're doing both, and that's why we spent more time on this than the TikTok. But we're doing both.
Okay.
And your story is something we hear a lot. I'm here, and I know a bunch of other people who are interested. I've been saying we have a 600% increase in volunteer pool the moment we normalize this conversation and let everybody know it's reasonable and rational to talk about this, and there's nothing wrong, and you're not crazy.
Yeah.
We think there's a lot more supporters who come forward, and that's why we keep saying you need to normalize the conversation. I do want to point out, though, that one of the things, so we've brought on other speakers, and I have a way that I answer the questions, and I do in-depth policy answers. We've been bringing on other speakers, and they answer the same questions not the way that I do, and they're knocking it out of the park. So there's not only one way to answer the question. I do hard policy, but for example, why do we need Calexit? And go, this is a story we're using. Let's say you and I are on a yacht, and the yacht starts to sink. The water comes up an inch, then another inch, then another inch. We wait a few days, another inch. Finally, the water comes up to your ankle. And I turn to you and I say, can we have a discussion about building a life raft? And you turn to me and say, idiot.
Yeah. Good analogy.
You get it? Yeah.
Or the sort of your end of the boat is sinking. Like that's
You're sinking, and I'm stupid.
Your end of the boat is sinking.
Exploratory committee on can we save ourselves? What an idiot. This guy wants to think about building a life raft when we're clearly sinking. How stupid. That crushes it. There's no coming back from that, because then they're going to go, oh no, everything's totally stable in America. There's nothing bad going on. Everything's working the way that it is. If they're seeing it, don't have a conversation with it. Most people, you go, look, do you think that for the first time in 200 years, when there's a natural disaster, the president comes out and says, I don't know if I want to help because I'm not sure I like you guys.
Yeah.
Does that spell stability to you?
Right. Well, there's
first world country where they would do that in. No. Tell me about when the Republicans walked back their support for Trump after he said that to Californians, and they said, Trump, I voted for you. I liked you, but you cannot talk to other Americans this way. People are dead. They were burned. They're homeless. You cannot speak to other Americans. Name that Republican. Nobody can name any. Yeah. Does that sound like a stable country?
Right.
Where half the party says nothing when the elected official looks at you and treats you like a disgusting foreigner that they're not sure they want to have anything to do for. When we say, tell me the stable Western country where that happens in, everybody just does this. Well, it's pretty bad.
Right. I'm
Why
really
do you need Republicans' answer? You just said the ship's sinking. Sign. That's it. That's 95%. That's all it takes.
Yeah. Sorry, I have to go take out garbage cans far enough away from my house that I don't want the coyotes and there's a mountain lion there. I'm gonna run real quick and take my garbage out. But thank you very much, and I will see you next week, and I'll do my homework.
Yes, ma'am.
Stay safe.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Do you have time for more?
Yeah, Kristen, and then we'll go to
some of the pushback I've gotten when I talk to people about it is that they expect that the pendulum of politics to swing back the other way in the next election. That
the what?
Trump,
The next election? They're so optimistic.
The pendulum will swing back, right? Because Trump is doing so many crazy and abhorrent things that the pendulum will swing back to the left for the next election. You don't think so?
Based on what?
Well, polls, for example, are showing his popularity numbers sinking, that he's now, his poll numbers are going down.
Polls are those.
If I may, he's run 3 races in a row. 3. And he's more popular now than he's ever been after committing an insurrection. They haven't stopped him. Biden said when he got elected in 2020, there would be a national calming and the Republicans would realize that they were wrong to back Trump. No one says that garbage anymore. So no, we're pushing 12 years of Trump's been here. I was here in 2016. He's gone in a second. Nobody's going to back him. The polls, they say they're turning on him. Oh my God, he's gone. He's going to be done. Everybody's turning. It's 12 years later. Where does this idea that the next election is going to be a turning point come from? Because there's no evidence of that for the last 3 elections at all. In fact, he's defied all the trends. You're going to tell me the guy did 3 elections in a row, an insurrection, he's more popular, but next election, Americans are going to realize after 3 in a row? What's that based on? That's a crazy concept.
So in political analysis, we follow the trend. We don't look at the one singular point right now or just the one from before and this one now. We look at as much of the picture as we can to really get the grand scope of the thing. And his popularity has not gone down. Maybe he's lost a percentage or 2 over the last month from his own base, but his popularity is still climbing higher and higher than it was 8 years ago. He is on track to actually having the vast majority, like 2/3 majority of America in support of him by the time that he's done at this term, which again, that was a constitutional amendment that didn't ever really exist in the United States up until 1940s, 1950s. So it's really not like some integral ancient part of the foundations of America. They put it in place because FDR won a 4th term by near unanimous decision. And they said, well, this could eventually be a bad thing because if someone's not actually popular and they're able to just continue getting in without actually representing the people, that's when it becomes dictatorship.
Well, he's certainly pissing off a lot of people all across the country. Yeah.
He won the majority vote.
And
straight up,
they're already talking about, getting rid of the term limits, the number of terms limit, so that he can run again and again and again.
He said this is the last election he'd to vote in.
Yeah. And, just throw that all away for a second and just go with the assumption that, okay, this is his last term, this is it. That actually makes him even more dangerous because he doesn't have to run for re-election. He's got the full 4 years, not 2. He's got his whole crony base with him from the get-go of this 4 years. His support is going up, Dem's support going down, or the opposition support going down, right? Clearer and clearer gap. It is highly likely that even if they're not going to undo that amendment and, try to keep him in power forever or whatever, even if they weren't going to do that, him being in power on his last term, his last chance to get all of this crazy fascist neo-Nazi crap done, really, expect insanity from an insane person. Expect a fascist to be a fascist. Expect a Nazi to be a Nazi. If you look at a Nazi and you say, well, maybe they're not going to be such a Nazi, I'd say you're being a little foolish.
But he is. But we know that he's very vindictive.
Oh, yeah.
And if California pulls away from the rest of the nation, he's going to take that. I mean, maybe he'll have mixed feelings about it, but I would bet you any amount of money that he would be so angry at California for actually, separating, that he would cut off our Social Security. And they have access to the Treasury. They can do it.
They could do it right now.
Yeah. Also, he can't cut us off if we're independent. So he can't.
Yeah. If we're independent, we're not tied to them. There's nothing to cut.
We can fund everything on our own. Additionally, there's no evidence for that, right? I mean, Trump has said he hates California. The Prime Minister of Greenland, when they offered to have California secede and join them, literally said to the international stage, "It's obvious Trump hates California." If foreign heads of state are saying, I'm clear across the pond and I can see Trump hates California, and the Republican Party had an entire national convention aimed at anti-California, and all the best boogeymen come from California, and some of his staff last term said, let's get rid of California, and Trump recently said he recognizes the right of self-determination, where's the evidence coming that they're not going to just kick us in the ass on the way out the door and then say, we never want to see you again? I mean, where does that come from?
I would also add that, so we have a pitch. Like, yeah, he is vindictive. He is a vindictive a-hole. We know this. And so we know better than to try to, spit in his face and tell him we're leaving. We know that in order to get him to agree to what we want, that we have to play nice. As much as it's going to be like a next to impossible task to keep my lunch down if I actually meet him in person, right? I am so committed to it. I will keep my lunch down until I am back out of the Oval Office, and then I'll find the nearest waste bin and sanitize and yeah. But we know you can't do that to his face, or else he will not work with you. You let him think that he is the great masterful statesman saving the United States of America from California. He'll lap that shit up. Pardon the French.
I would point out, you had a question earlier about Trump's trying to take over Greenland and Canada. Why would he let California go? So Trump has said repeatedly that the reason he's interested in taking over Greenland and Canada is for military reasons. What he's talking about is that the Defense Department about 4 or 5 years ago realized that the Arctic Circle is melting and that new passageways are going to be opened. That means that Russia will have more operational navigatable routes, and they're worried about Russia having an expanded presence in the Arctic. Canada and Greenland border the Arctic. America's only property that borders the Arctic is Alaska. So he's been told by military officials, if he increases the amount of borderland we have by 800%, then we have a better listening and standing point against the Russians in the Arctic. It's about military defense. He has said nothing about that for California. That's why California can leave for political reasons, and he wouldn't be bothered, but why he's pushing for Greenland and Canada. Look at his speeches. He always says, I've been told for military reasons.
I thought it was also for their resources, their natural resources.
I'll just say, look at all the speeches he said. He always mentions, I've been told it's for military reasons. Someone in the Defense Department is telling him for military reasons, we want that. And almost anytime he's mentioned this, you'll also see him make that statement.
It's also kind of an old thing. Back during the age of exploration, Greenland and Newfoundland were used very heavily as launching points for many explorations. It's just one of those things, they're like, hey, there's this area we know little about. Here's this landmass. Let's, use this as our jump off point. It's kind of like a way station, right? A halfway point. They've known that, and Europe, America, the world's known about it for a long time. The world stopped really thinking about that so much up until recently, with global warming, it's all a hoax. It's all a hoax. Oh wait, the Arctic is melting, and now we need to have more shipping lanes up there, or else Russia controls it all. But global warming's still a hoax.
Yeah. Okay, I just have one more practical question.
Sure. So, we're going to go to Stanley.
Yeah. So, Marcus, you mentioned that you're keeping track of the number of signatures that have been collected. So, who's keeping track, and who do I tell when I've got signatures to report?
You would tell me.
Okay. And then you're making up this big spreadsheet or database or
I'll keep track of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's it for me.
Okay. Stanley?
So I just have two comments, not really questions. One
Sure.
is The Social Security threat, I believe Social Security, and I don't know, but we need to maybe really be able to answer this. I understand Social Security is paid in by the present workers to pay for the current retirees.
Yes.
So that's why Elon Musk will say it's a pyramid scheme, but it's ridiculous. The point is that California could step in with its own Social Security tax if that was to come to that. Plus, we'll have a revamped immigration system. We're going to have more youth coming into the workforce legally, and I think that should be part of our platform. And that will actually strengthen Social Security. So, worst case scenario, I mean, we would have a California system that would be more solvent than the federal system.
Absolutely. So we're a donor state. So we pay more in than we get back. So you're paying for the Social Security, right? We as Californians, maybe not you directly, but people younger than you when they pay federal income taxes are paying for your Social Security.
Right.
When we're independent, all that money stays here.
Right.
On top of that, we have to give money as a donor state, $20 to $100 million each year to 35 states. And on top of that, we can't sell our international products to everybody. We have to wait 5 to 10 years. And additionally, certain international products like tech, Hollywood, and ag, our top 3 industries, we can't sell to customers because they won't say it. So because they don't want to be associated with any products from America. So we're talking about end of donor state status. We're talking about more international trade. We're talking about less regulation on your business. We're talking about more sales to international customers. There's no financial loss to this at all. We make money, and then we make money, and we make money, and we even make even more money when we're independent.
And we stop hemorrhaging money.
Yeah. Now, if people want to be part of America for some other reason, sure. But if you're saying, oh, we couldn't survive and we lose money, that's a total lie. We gain money, independence, and it is a financial loser for us to be part of America. Not my statement. Professor Abraham Lowenthal out of Long Beach State and now the University of Southern California Schwarzenegger Center said that in the book Global California. He's the foremost expert on international trade in the West Coast to Asia. And he said it's a financial loss for California to be part of America, period. Now, if you want to stay part of America, sure, for some other reason, but just know you're losing money every day you're doing this, and there's no way out of it, and it'll never get better.
And that's why I think it's important to somewhat disengage and not have it just be a referendum on Trump. Because sure, that's easy and that's going to be great. But I think if we get caught into, we're just the anti-Trump thing, I think we do better saying, no, we want to forge because we don't think it's going to work either way. And we get away from that because it's so obvious. I mean, the Trump thing that's going to help sell it by itself. I think what we want to do is show the positives, economic, lower regulations, all kinds of personal freedoms, a fixed immigration policy, an environmental policy that the people vote for. So, yeah, I think that's important that we don't get just totally caught up because I think that the media and I think that the parties will just say, oh, this is just a referendum on Trump. And it's got to be more than that. It's got to be something like, no, these are people who take it seriously and see that we're headed towards, the current path isn't sustainable.
Yeah, well, and let me just point out for you, the way that when I'm from a long line of military family. I'm one of the very, very few people in my entire family tree who didn't serve. And that's only because it was a time of war and they needed someone to stay back. When I talk to military personnel, former, current, all of that, right? I like to point out that there is literally nothing more in line with the founding fathers of the United States of America than what we're doing.
Absolutely.
Especially in the course of human events.
Especially when you have a federal government that's literally
heading
towards a monarchy. I mean, I think, there's a huge, and I think it's going to build, people don't want a king, so that's going to sell itself. And I think that should be underlying for us. an anti-monarchical push.
Well said.
It's very un-American what's going on.
Well
It's
said.
unbelievably un-American.
I will point out that we started this in 2014 when Barack Obama was president. It wasn't a protest against Obama. It was that we were seeing America's falling apart then. CBS San Francisco, one of the most hardcore liberal television stations, basically admitted that 2 weeks ago. So we are acknowledged for having started during the Obama era by one of the most liberal television stations in all of California.
Yeah.
Again, not protesting Obama, but saying we're already seeing signs falling apart. If you go to, I would also point out is Trump is another shade of Biden. Yeah, so a lot of the stuff that Trump is doing, like Latin kids in cages, expanding the wall, banning refugees from coming in, Biden totally backed all those policies, getting into a trade war with China, and especially for Californians, the SALT cap, he removed the SALT cap. Trump did that to specifically hurt us, and Biden kept it in place.
Yeah.
Well, that's part of the thing. Like, how's that good for us?
That's
Finally,
terrible.
I point out, we've always said this isn't about Trump. This is about what kind of people will try to elect this guy 3 elections in a row, and the fact that you're tied to them. And after a 12-year period, that group isn't going to change their mind because of some new election or a pony comes or a star shows up. This is the new trajectory of America. Additionally, I wrote an essay before the Trump election where I predicted that no matter who wins, America will be more racist to the year 2044. What I was pointing out is that the U.S. Census says that white voters will not stop being the majority voting base until the year 2024. So while there's more minorities, they are babies and can't vote, which means there's a dominant white voting majority bloc for the next 2 decades. When you look at California in the 1990s and the country of Fiji, there's a sociological concept called tipping. What it means is, let's say you have, like Fiji, 60% of the population is ethnic Fijian and 40% are Indian nationals who were imported by the British when they owned it. Okay, everything's stable. Then one day, the ethnic Indians become 45% of the population, and the indigenous Fijians become 55. Then it goes 47, 52, 49, 51. Somewhere when you were 60% of the population and you get about 2 or 3 percentage points close to 50, you lash out with violence in order to attack the opposition and maintain your support. That's what happened in California. The white majority was actually becoming a minority during the 1990s, and that's when you saw Proposition 187, the idea to make English the only language here. A lot of anti-xenophobic, anti-nationalist sentiment. If you look at Fiji, they also had the same population dynamic where they were going to 60 to 50. And if you look at America, America's now entered that period where white people are going from 60% to less than a minority. That transition doesn't end till 20 years from now. So according to some sociologists, you can expect America to become more racist for the next 2 decades, because it's really not about Trump. It's about demographic changes in America, which many experts have pointed to.
Yeah, except the only thing I would say there to add is the Latino vote is not monolithic by any stretch of imagination.
Right.
I'm fighting with more Latino MAGAs here. You wouldn't believe it. But,
Yep, I have family in Texas. I can tell you, California Mexicans do not act, talk, think, or act like Texas Mexicans. Seen my cousins many times, love each other, have wildly different opinions. It's almost like
I've seen that Texas Mexican. Yeah, I've seen that.
So there's this liberal concept that all Latins are going to turn liberal no matter what. That's not true.
No.
Latin people absorb the politics of the area that they live in.
That's especially around the both abortion and women's rights. They tend to be no special thing there.
More conservative, true. But when you look at California, they're mostly all liberal here, and that's why Central Valley, Orange County, San Diego is that the Latins here go liberal. So as the Latin demographic increases in those areas, you can only tell it's going to become more liberal, because basically birth decline. The Caucasian people are not producing babies at the same rate as Latin people and Asian people. And Latin and Asian people in urban settings typically almost always vote liberal.
We have a lot of Asian conservatives here too. We have a huge Korean community.
Because it's in Orange County. Let's talk about the Asians in Santa Monica or Berkeley or San
Yeah.
Francisco. I bet they're nothing like the Orange County Asians.
It could be. I don't know. It's a Korean thing. All right, I got to go soon. Is there anything else that we want to cover now?
No, we'll leave it there. We want to thank everybody. We'll leave it there. It's been around a 2-hour show, but we've got a lot done, lots of questions. We're going to post this up for everybody to watch for more training. We'll see you next Sunday. We're here every Sunday to answer your questions.
Good.
And at 6 o'clock here, and TikTok's usually at 7. I know this time it was at 5, but those are typically the times. We'll see you all soon, and thank you all for coming out.
And anyone who's interested in training as far as how to approach people and get the conversation going about Calexit, email us, let us know that you're interested in that. We'll, based on demand, we'll put together a group of folks who want some training and get it done. Thank you all, and Viva Todos Californios.
Sounds good. Be well.